And we have two guests in this morning to talk about an upcoming program that's going to be held at the Newburyport Senior Community Center on Wednesday night. We have Jeff Clark and Lon Hackmeister. And our guests are here to tell us all about the program. We've had some folks on from Storm Surge before, but we always like to get more on. And Jeff, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what folks can expect on Wednesday night over the Senior Community Center in Newburyport?
Good. Well, thank you. So the event is really focused on, for one, kind of doing an update on the information we understand about how the warming climate is affecting, like a lot of extreme weather events that we've seen recently. So there'll be a little bit of focus on that. But the main focus of the evening is really going to be about what can people do, what initiatives can people get involved with, what's going on at the state and the local level that the citizens really need to help support. Because with Storm Surge and another group I'm involved with, the Climate Action Project at the First Religious Society, I mean, we've run all kinds of programs, and people at the end always say, well, yeah, we understand the issue, but what can we do about it? They get frustrated. And there's actually a lot going on, both in the city of Newburyport and at the state level. There's a lot of legislation. And so one of the main speaker, Rob Bonney, who's from Citizens Climate Lobby, is going to talk about all those various initiatives, and we're going to try to get some discussion among the group about, what are particular things that you would want to help support, whether it's carbon fees, whether it's supporting renewable energies, green banks. What are the things that the local citizens would be interested in supporting?
Oh, wow. There's a lot, too. I didn't anticipate that there would be so many different groups in there, but yeah. They all have their area of expertise.
Yeah. Well, they all have the impact on the climate.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, is to shift from a fossil fuel dependent economy to more of a renewable energy, clean energy dependent economy. And there's countries around the world that are making that shift, and we're trying to encourage ours to do the same.
All right. Well, we also have Lon Hackmeister with us, and Lon has been studying the environment for a while.
40 years. Yeah. About 40 years.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about, are you going to be speaking at all on Wednesday?
I will not be speaking on Wednesday, but I am a physical oceanographer meteorologist, and I've been working in coastal studies, like I said, about 40 years. And I guess these days I'm retired. I'm doing some consulting, but I volunteer with Storm Surge. I think the important thing about the meeting on Wednesday night and the presentation is going to be kind of just the description of what's going on in the environment and global warming and climate change, and how they all relate to energy, and how energy in the system, atmospheric system, causes storms to be it doesn't generate more storms, but it causes them to have more energy, be more powerful. If we look back at 2017, I think we had 18 low-pressure systems generated out in the Atlantic. 17 of those turned into named storms. 6 turned into greater than Class 3 hurricanes. And in a 1 month, a little over a month period, we had 2 Category 5s and 2 Category 4 hurricanes. And a lot of them make landfall. They caused a lot of damage. This is going to become the more norm. It's going to be, we're going to be seeing more of this. Not so much that more low pressure systems are going to develop, but that they're going to turn into hurricanes and larger atmospheric events, and that's going to affect the coastlines.
So they'll be stronger. That's the energy part of it.
More energy in the system, and we're seeing that in the way the jet stream moves. We're seeing these large cold areas, the polar vortexes, as they're called, coming down from Alaska. So we're looking at the month of December. There was no snow in Moscow, Russia, and there was snow in Atlanta, Georgia. So things are changing as the difference in temperature between the North and the North Pole and the equator reduces. You can have larger waves in the jet stream, and those jet streams are going to bring cold air down and warm air up.
Oh wow! You're the first person I've ever met who counts how many low-pressure areas generated in the Atlantic.
Well, they get generated about every 2 weeks off the coast of Africa, propagate in our direction. And depending how much energy is put into them, they either fade away or turn into just tropical storms, or in some cases, hurricanes. And I mean, the fact that the Virgin Islands and that area, Puerto Rico, were pretty much hit by 2 hurricanes in a row is really unusual.
Now, I might be a few storms behind, but does this have anything to do with El Nino and La Nina at all, or is that different?
A little bit. The Atlantic was overly warm in 2017, and the Pacific was a little cold, and that can help the instability in the jet stream and allow these weather systems to propagate north and south. Everything propagates east eventually, but the wave, I don't know how to describe it. The wave that the jet stream takes is what carries that cold air down, and then when that meets the air coming up, the moist, warm air from the south, that's what causes snow and rain. And that's the other thing we've seen too. The hurricanes, when they come through, are bad enough normally with the winds, but warmer air holds more moisture, and the more moisture. Look at Texas with that one. Was
Houston.
it Houston? Somebody got 5 feet of rain this in one event.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened with the? I'll just call it a cold snap that we had a couple of weeks at the end of December and January. Was that anything, or is that just
That's the jet stream coming south and carrying the, in quote, polar vortex. I don't know where that name came from, but polar vortex carrying that colder air south.
That's where it was warmer in Anchorage, Alaska than it was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
It just shifted the whole way that the jet stream works.
Wow. So coming up on Wednesday night at the talk that's going to be at the Senior Community Center in Newburyport, they'll get an update on things that are happening, and then probably they'll just give a few examples about what is happening and why it's happening. Is that right?
Correct.
Certainly it'll start out that way and then move into what people can do about that in their communities and in their own personal lives. What can you do to reduce your carbon footprint, things like this, and places you can volunteer time to try and help things. Education's part of the system too.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're talking with Jeff Clark and Lon Hackmeister, and they're involved with putting on this program on Wednesday, over the Wednesday evening at the Newburyport Senior Community Center. That'll start at 7 o'clock in the evening. Now, Lon, before we came on the air, you were talking about your work history, and I guess you spent quite a few years in your own polar vortex up surrounded by snow.
I was an Arctic oceanographer for 18 years, so I did a lot of the early work up in Alaska, mostly funded by the federal government in anticipation of oil and gas development. They were doing leasing up there, and the government decided they would like to know a little bit more about the physics and the oceanography, what's going on up there, before they started leasing the lands.
Okay.
And so myself and maybe 5 other people, there weren't many people working up there then, starting in the 70s on through the 80s, trying to figure out the air-sea interaction, how the atmosphere interacts with the ocean and with an ice interface in between. So it was pretty interesting, especially because most of the research hadn't been done.
Yeah.
So it was all new.
So the ice interface between the air and the ocean, that means everything, doesn't it?
Yes, it means a lot. When I was operating up there in the early 80s, 1980s, the ice was onshore in August, the middle of the summer. Literally, I had to, in some cases, pull Zodiac along the shoreline to move along the coast. And every year it just seems to move further and further offshore, and it changes the dynamics completely of the water and atmospheric interaction. Ice interface insulates it. when the ice is gone, you get solar warming. You get the interaction between the two, and it's warming the air, and the water's going to warm underneath it too. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You learn so much here.
Well, and then the oceans rise right off the shore here. It's all connected.
I remember. Yeah, we had somebody on talking about that's the name of another group, right? Rise.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, what can you do about something like that? So, I guess it all boils down to try to get away from use of gasoline or oil and that type of heating source.
It's actually not too late to slow things down.
Oh, really?
We're not going to stop it because the carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for about 100 years. But we could stop putting more in.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what about other countries? Do we have any pull with other countries? I'm thinking like China probably just they want to catch up, so they do whatever they need to do to do.
Yeah. Well, certainly there's countries in Europe that have made commitments to move to clean energy sources. Denmark is a big one. I can't remember the percentage, but they have a very high percentage of their power is generated by wind. Germany is doing the same thing. I know Norway, which is an oil producer, they're trying to make the transition to all electric cars, and then having that be generated by renewables. So China's in the interesting position because they are the world's largest producer of solar panels. They're also probably the world's largest burner of coal. So, and they're trying to keep their economy revving, but they are trying to make that transition, and certainly they in the U.S. are the biggest contributors to the global warming gases.
Yeah, and I'm thinking Russia too, or the Soviet Union, just trying to be able to generate power to keep the economy running.
Right, and they're a big exporter of gas to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think a lot of the estimates too that people are making for sea level rise, if you look back 15 years or more, you'll see that by the end of the century they're talking 6 inches, maybe a foot, and now they're up with the peak, the maximum at 6 feet, and I think we're going to see that going up more, the estimates going up because there's the systems, the feedback systems are so nonlinear. As it gets warmer, the permafrost melts in Alaska, Canada, Siberia, and all that's carbon just sitting there. It's like the tundra will oxidize once it melts, and that's going to throw more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. All these feedback systems that the climate models don't include are going to be happening, and we need to stop how much carbon dioxide we're putting into the atmosphere. Wow. It's much more important than I think we realize.
Well, the education is a terrific tool, and that's what Wednesday night's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Anything else you'd like folks to know about what's going on as far as Wednesday night or some of the groups that are involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing is that there is a lot that organizations like Storm Surge, Climate Action Project, Transitions, Newbury Report, certainly the Audubon Society and Parker River Wildlife. I mean, everybody is trying to do education efforts, and so if anybody is interested in how they themselves can get involved, I mean, all of those places are great resources and groups to try to connect with and get involved. We're all on Facebook pages and things like that. And there's the City of Newburyport. City of Newburyport's got a resiliency committee and it's got an energy committee, and they're looking to make a commitment. I mean, it's already, I think the city is powered 35% by solar, by the array in Salisbury, and they're trying to see how they could make a move to be 100% powered by renewables in 2050. So get involved locally. There's all types of support you could give to these various groups. Yeah,
I've noticed more and more solar panels as I walk around town, which I'm finding them on houses, on garages, and things like that. So that's kind of neat. You wouldn't see that 10 years ago.
Right, absolutely.
Well, that's something you can do personally, because you can lower your carbon footprint by offsetting the carbon that in effect that you generate in order to keep your house heated or lighted or have your appliances, everything else operating inside.
So that so you generate the power, and then the power gets sold back to the power company,
Right.
and then you get your credit on however that works.
On top of everything, you get that.
Oh, okay.
Plus, you've lowered your footprint by in effect negating the amount of carbon that you produce. You're in quote living off of solar powered energy then.
Well, Lon, I just want to ask one quick question. So when you were up in the up north, and you had 5 people around, what did it look like when you could look out and see nobody?
Well, most of my work was above or north of the Brooks Range,
Uh-huh.
and it's pretty much like Kansas, except it's frozen. There's not much out there. You'll see herds of musk oxen. Caribou are pretty scarce. You don't see them that much, but they're up there. A high point on the land is maybe 4 feet high, and you'll see snowy owls sitting on that, looking for lemmings to go have for lunch. So it's not much up there. We did have bears in the camp in the summers most days.
Bears?
And, oh yeah, these are bears. These are really big bears, and you really have to watch yourself. They're not out looking for you, but it's especially dangerous in the fall because they're trying to fatten up for the winter for hibernation. But they're really big. But it's flat and it's beautiful up there. The Anwar Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is just incredible, and I really worry about the fact that now we're going to open it up for oil and gas drilling because I don't know how to describe it. It's just incredible with the mountains behind it and back then the ice offshore. These days it's open water.
Yeah, and that's 30, 40 years of watching it that you've seen the changes.
Oh, big changes.
Yeah.
Big changes up there. And erosion, too, because between the sea level rise and the fact that things are warmer, the shorelines are eroding back much more rapidly than they used to.
And that affects that affects the wind, that affects the weather, which affects us, and then on and on it goes.
Well, there's people who live on the coast that they got to move. I mean, Alaska, there's whole communities they've got to move off the coast.
Yeah. Now
and you can't back up to. You can't back. There's no elevation, so you can't just back. You just have to stay away from what's falling into the water.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So when say down here the water goes up 6 inches, where in Newburyport would 6 inches bring you to? Would that pretty much cover up Plum Island?
Well, I mean, the thing is that what happens is that when you get the high tides and the storm events, then the flooding becomes worse.
Oh.
So it's like, you say that 6 inches, it doesn't happen necessarily evenly on a nice basis, but it's like, when you've got like a nor'easter and you've got water coming down the Merrimack because of all the rain, and you've got the winds coming in, and then and then all the storm activity, that's when downtown, the industrial park, parts of Plum Island, and certainly a couple weeks ago, Plum Bush Downs area, that was all underwater.
Okay.
So it's and there's, Newbury and Salisbury, Seabrook are all really endangered by the fact that people are living in all these areas that will pretty soon be flooded on a very regular basis.
Yeah.
And you don't have to live on the coast to have this affect you, because there are back doors into where a lot of people live.
Oh yeah.
So the water could come from the river too. They could come from the Merrimack. It could come in from the Parker. They'll all be going up. So basically, what you're doing is the sea level rise is just going to raise the baseline. But on top of the sea level rise is the storm intensification. So we're going to have a little bit higher water level, and you're going to have maybe more harsh conditions when the storms come through, and that'll just going to lead to more erosion. So
well, it's interesting, and for folks to learn more about it, I would suggest Wednesday night, 7:00 at the Newburyport Senior Community Center, 331 High Street in Newburyport. That works out well. Hey, Jeff and Lon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to having you guys back. I know it's a little early for you, but but we'll look forward to having you back in and talking about this, and keep us informed with the future meetings that are going on too.
Will do.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much. Our guests, Jeff Clark and Lon Hackmeister, and talking about the event that's going to be taking place at the Newburyport Senior Community Center coming up on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. It'll be very informative. I think you'll enjoy it. And you certainly will learn a few things. It's 8:25 this morning here on WJOP Radio 96.3 FM. And our guest right now is Newburyport. Or make that, you've got enough to deal with.
Newburyport already has a mayor.
Yeah. But it's Salisbury Town Manager Neil Harrington. And Neil, sorry to put you in the wrong town.
Glad Mayor Holliday. I hope Mayor Holliday didn't hear that.
But, well, it gives you good fodder for the upcoming St. Patrick's Day luncheon, right?
I
For the
suppose,
Lincoln
yes. Matter of fact, I just received my invitation to that, so I'll be there.
Oh, that is always a good time. Now, is State Senator Kathleen O'Connor Ives, is she the hostess?
I believe
again?
she is. It's going to be on Friday the 16th, the day before.
Oh, okay.
St. Patrick's Day falls on a Saturday this year.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, we're looking forward to that. And looking forward to things that are happening in Salisbury. Lots of things are going on in Salisbury. And I guess a lot revolves around the planning board, right?
Yes, the planning board is going to be very busy this winter with a couple of major proposals before it. The first is the so-called Big Block redevelopment project. That is the project that's being proposed to redevelop the stretch of buildings that front on Oceanfront South, which is the part of the beach that's just closest to the boardwalk. And all of those property owners have gotten together to put forward a mixed-use development with about 200 and something condos and retail and other commercial on the first floor. It takes up the entire block, which is why they call it the Big Block. They've already started the process now of presenting their architectural plans and all of their schemes for design and what's the word I'm looking for here? Traffic flow, all of the various components that go into a large-scale development. So there are several consultants that are evaluating these proposals on behalf of the planning board. We have an architectural consultant, we have a traffic consultant that are all looking at these various plans, and they've already started the hearing process. The public hearing is now open. At the planning board, it will probably continue for several weeks. There has already been lots of public comments already, and we urge people that are interested in the project and who want to know more about the project to either watch it on SCTV or attend the hearings themselves.
Oh, okay. I never. You mentioned traffic flow. I never thought about traffic flow. How do you get in? How do you get out?
It's very important because there is a limited amount of parking available for a project like this. The proposal does meet all of the parking requirements, but anytime you're talking about 200 year-round residents in a very congested area, you're talking about a certain amount of traffic. And how that traffic flows in and out of that project is going to be important because it's right adjacent to the beach center. Obviously, in the summertime, there's a lot of people coming to the beach that don't live at the beach, and how the new traffic would flow into what normally happens at the beach at the summertime, which is, a very, very crowded scene with lots of cars. That's important. In conjunction with that, not really in conjunction with that, but at the same time, the town is looking at I think we talked about this once before, talking about changing the parking situation at the beach. We're eliminating all of the parking meters, and we're going to a kiosk system with designated zones that will have differential parking rates depending upon what zone that you park in. So, for example, if you park in the big beach parking lot, that will probably remain the same at $15 a day. But at the beach center and some of the various streets around the beach center, including the streets around this development, there will be different parking rates depending upon the time of the day or the time of the week that people have. So, for example, one of our proposals is to limit the amount of all-day parking at the beach center, and to make the beach center primarily relatively short-term parking. Right now, you could theoretically feed a meter at the beach center all day and go to the beach and take up a prime parking spot that would otherwise be helpful to one of the local merchants or something like that. So we're looking at the same time that this big block development's going on. We're looking at changing the parking patterns at the beach and changing how we charge for different areas of the beach, so encouraging people to stay long-term in the longer lots and short-term in the shorter parking spots.
Well, I bet with those kiosks, I bet that they can be programmed to
Yes.
only let you park.
They can be programmed for differential rates, different times. For example, you may want to have a different rate on a weekend than you would have on a Monday or a Tuesday, something like that. They're also programmable such that you could add additional time via an app on your phone, so that you don't have to run back and, in the old days, feed the meter.
Mm-hmm.
You could program additional time. If you're sitting on the beach, you can just take out your device and program additional time depending upon where you're parked, and it should be a lot more convenient for people.
Oh, wow. Well, that would be tough for somebody like you who doesn't use a cell phone.
That is true. We won't talk about that today, but we're trying to adapt to the modern world and the way things are. A lot of people use apps for almost everything now. Parking meters are passé in a lot of places. These kiosks work very, very well, and they last a long, long time. They're solar powered, which is very interesting, so they don't chew up electricity. And the older meters are just a pain in the neck to try to service and repair, particularly in the salt air, where they corrode and the replacement parts are hard to get. And most communities are moving away from them.
Mm-hmm. Now, and what was the other project that?
Oh, the other project that's at the planning board right now is a very interesting project being proposed by Habitat for Humanity. They approached the town last year about doing a project in town. They were able to acquire, through a very generous donation from the Institution for Savings, a parcel of land on Old County Road, and they're looking to put several units of affordable housing there. So they are also before the planning board with their plans. The town supports the project, and we're hoping that that approval process will move ahead so that they can get in the ground for this construction season.
Oh, that would be fantastic. That would go along with what the YWCA is doing.
And that's another thing that's just starting. That's a different type of a project. That's a 40B project, so that goes before the zoning board, not the planning board. And the good news is that the YWCA, which was chosen by the town to do this other affordable housing project at the former Spalding School and at a site on Elm Street that the town took through non-payment of taxes, they're going to create 42 units of affordable housing there. And it goes before the zoning board as what they call a comprehensive permit as a 40B project. And that will also be vetted in terms of architectural integrity and traffic issues and things like that. But the good news is they got a very large grant for that state project. In addition, our Affordable Housing Trust has put a lot of money into the project, and they're looking forward to closing and acquiring those properties from the town sometime either in February or March, and also be in the ground for this construction season. So that's pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, that certainly is. Yeah, I saw something in the paper today, the Daily News, that the Triton School District is looking to come up with like uniform contracts with with each town in the district, which includes Salisbury, for the elementary school. I didn't realize that Triton, right? I guess the Triton School District has the school, and then eventually it goes over to the town.
Yes, in Salisbury, it's a bit of an anomaly. Salisbury, the elementary school in Salisbury is technically still owned by Triton Regional. In the other communities, the pre-existing elementary schools were already owned by, respectively, the town of Rowley and the town of Newbury. And when the district decided to fully regionalize, the town still retained ownership of those buildings, but they allowed, for lack of a better word, Triton to use them to educate their kids. In Salisbury, the old elementary school, the Memorial School, was discontinued, and when the new building was built, the town was not in a financial position to go out and bond for the project, even though the town adopted an override. The bonding was done under the auspices of Triton Regional School because they had a better bond rating and they felt that they could save the district a lot of money. So they technically own the building until the bond is finally paid off, which is another year from now. So after a year from now, the question is who will own the building? And the big sub-question of that is who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of the building. Right now, it's Triton. In the other two communities, as I said, they are responsible for the own maintenance of their own buildings. I believe the goal was to get all three communities on a level playing field, either through an amendment to the regional agreement or through, a contract that each of the communities would sign with Triton, spelling out who's responsible for what in terms of maintenance of the building. So it's an anomaly when you have a regional school district that the way that we have it, and a year from now we're going to have to make a decision. So they're starting to plan for it right now.
How about that? We're talking with Salisbury Town Manager Neil Harrington, and talking about schools. The old Plains School, you were looking for some bids on that recently.
Yes, we're in the final stages of evaluating 4 proposals that we received, and ultimately we'll have to bring it before the Board of Selectmen to decide which of the proposals they feel they are comfortable with. It's not strictly an auction of the property, so we're not held to just the highest bidder. It was we issued what's called a request for proposals, which allows people to bid a certain amount of money to acquire the property, but also to tell us specifically what they intend to use the property for. So we can look at a combination of price and use to decide which is the best fit for the town. Obviously, we are hoping that the best fit will be, the person who bids the most amount of money and has the most compatible use, but we're still evaluating all the proposals at this time.
All right, and I've noticed some activity around the green, Salisbury Square, and I think you've had a pretty good winter to work around there.
Well, they actually started the project before the first snow started to fly, and then they've buttoned it up. For the winter. You'll notice when you drive by there's a fence around the entire site, so they won't start again until the spring, but they've already eliminated some of the dead trees and started to lay out some of the new paths. Over the winter we're talking about fabricating the new Veterans Memorial, and then this company will come back in the springtime and finish all the work. There's going to be the grass is all going to be newly seeded, and there'll be a sprinkler system installed, etc. The key element, as I mentioned, will be the new Veterans Memorial that's being fabricated over the winter, and the goal is to have the project finished by the late spring. We may or may not, depending upon how the grass takes, be able to hold the Memorial Day service actually on the common. If the grass isn't ready to handle several hundred people, we will probably hold it elsewhere just for this year. But once the newly seeded grass takes and the sprinkler system works and the grass comes in, hopefully as well as it did with the library project, the new common will look really fabulous. There'll be new benches there as well, and it will really be a nice attraction in the middle of the town.
All right. Well, anything else going on in Salisbury?
Mostly planning things. As I mentioned my last time here, the winter is the time when we plan for new road projects for the next year and other types of things that we hope to do. So there's a lot of studying going on and a lot of planning. We're applying for a few grants here and there to do things. We just applied, for example, for what's called a recreational trails grant to allow us to acquire a certain parcel of land that's adjacent to the rail trail that we hope to build sometime in the next year to year and a half. We hope that will go out to bid. And we need to acquire an area adjacent to that to create what's called a head end so that people can park their cars there and then get out and then enjoy the rail trail. So we're applying for a grant to acquire some of that land. So we're doing a lot of that. We're looking at right-of-way issues and kind of technical things that are involved in trying to acquire this head end and planning to do the construction of the rail trail, which is going to be constructed all with state and federal money. Nice. So we're hopeful that they'll be able to get that project out to bid by the end of this federal fiscal year, which is
October,
September 30th. Is the last day of the federal fiscal year. So they're hoping to put it out to bid by then, and that will run from the end of the Ghost Trail all the way out behind Lions Park, across the old railroad bridge. There'll be a new railroad bridge across Lafayette Road, out behind the school and the new park that we just created, and all the way to the New Hampshire border. So it's really a pretty exciting project.
Oh, yeah. Because I know that they are starting to work on one in Seabrook, which would pick up right there.
And we're talking to Seabrook as well, because we need to make a connection with them ultimately. Mm-hmm. So it's really pretty exciting. We've created several miles of rail trail already. We're also working with Amesbury to construct a connector trail underneath the Route 95, 495 junction there. There's a railroad right-of-way that runs underneath those two highways, and we're hoping to connect our two rail trails, Amesbury and Salisbury, so that you'll be able to have an interconnected network between Amesbury, Salisbury, eventually Seabrook, but also Newburyport, etc. We're having the rail trail, what they call a multi-use trail, will go across the new Whittier Bridge and you'll be able to connect directly from Salisbury to Newburyport. And then the Newburyport Rail Trail obviously connects south to Newbury and from there on further south. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can see it all blend together. Yeah. And going underneath is a lot better than trying to run across the highway.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And there's some land issues there, and there's some right-of-way issues and things, but these are the types of things you work on over the winter time when things are relatively quiet. You can't do any actual construction out in the field, so you do all of your planning and your legal work and you assemble all the documents you have to get ready to go out to bid for these projects.
All right, well, we'll let you get going so you can do some planning.
We have a lot to do. Actually, I've only got about 6 weeks to plan whatever song I'm going to sing for St. Patrick's Day, so I better get going.
You generally you write the lyrics, right, yourself?
Well, last year they went to this format where the various local officials sing rather than tell stale jokes, which we've been doing for years. So that's a better format for me, quite frankly. I'm a better singer than I am a joke teller. So that works for me, but I have to come up with something original.
All right, so March 16th.
Yes.
And that'll be the Masonic Hall on Green Street in Newburyport to benefit the Link House. All right, well, Neil, thank you again, and we'll get you back before that. We'll see how
Sure, let's do it. Okay.
See how it all is working together for your new song.
Great, thank you.
All right. Neil Harrington, Salisbury Town Manager, our guest this morning here on WJOP Radio 96.3 FM.